I wonder if you've ever noticed something rather peculiar about the pilot of your own life. Something you might try not to look at too closely. It's this: you are almost constantly running. Not always on your feet, but a psychological flight, a relentless inner velocity. You wake up, and before you've tasted the coffee, your mind is already off running through the day's threats, running from yesterday's conversations, running towards a goal perpetually located over there. This running is not a moral failing. It is a system error. The mind is an evolutionary masterpiece, a magnificent biological computer whose primary function is to scan the environment and ask, what could possibly go wrong here? For our ancestors, this troubleshooter was survival. A rustle in the tall grass, a lion, and the immediate shot of cortisol kept us alive. It was a brilliant servant, but the system is malfunctioning. We do not live in the tall grass. We live in high-rise apartments and digital noise. Yet, our troubleshooter is still constantly on, firing the exact same neurochemistry, the adrenaline, the cortisol, but for threats that do not exist. A stock portfolio dip, an abstract rumor, or an imagined slight from 6 years ago. It has become so sensitive, it's picking up static from distant galaxies. And we, in our modern state, have made a fatal error where we identify with this problem-finding mechanism. We think the frantic chatter in our skull is us. But what happens when you identify yourself completely with the part of your being whose sole mandate is to worry, whose fundamental job description is to scan the horizon only for catastrophe? You are, in essence, defining your identity around a perpetually unresolved state. You are saying, I am a problem finder, and therefore, I must always have problems to confirm my existence. This is the vicious circle generated by the default mode network, the DMN. The DMN is the self-referential engine of the brain, constantly constructing narratives about the past regret and the future worry. Its function is necessary for planning, but in the modern environment, the DMN is perpetually stuck in overdrive, creating problems where none exist. We are not running from physical peril. We are running from the silence, from the stillness, because the stillness forces the DMN, the ego's mechanism, to shut down. If it shuts down, who are you? The troubleshooter screams, I need to be busy to be important. I need to worry to be prepared. And so, we create exquisite feedback loops, neurological traps designed to ensure we never run out of anxiety. The primary loop is the meta-anxiety, being anxious about the fact that you are anxious. This phenomenon is often intensified by the toxic modern self-help culture. We are told anxiety is a sign of failure, a flaw that must be corrected. We view our feelings as technical defects, something to be analyzed, medicated, or meditated away. But look at the mechanism of repair. We are attempting to use the same frantic, problem-solving mind to solve the problem of the frantic, problem-solving mind being too active. This is not just philosophically absurd. It is neurologically impossible. The very effort of trying to fix the anxiety is itself an anxious, effortful act that releases more stress hormones. It is the ultimate double bind. You are trying to grab hold of your own coat collar and lift yourself off the ground. The attempt to escape your own mind only tightens its grip, like the Chinese finger trap. The struggle to be positive, to force yourself into a future state of perfect calm, only validates the deep-seated belief that you are in the present moment, fundamentally flawed. The mind cannot grasp itself directly. Trying to define or fix your core self is like trying to bite your own teeth. It's an impossibility because the biter and the bitten are the same. Now, consider the classic Zen analogy of the muddy pond. If the water is churned up, how do you clear it? We don't send in a submarine to filter it. We don't stir it faster. We simply leave it alone. We allow the mud to settle all by itself, in its own good time. This letting it be is not passive negligence. It is an intelligent, deep biological command. When you stop the frantic intellectual stirring the fight, you are actively engaging your parasympathetic nervous system, activating the mighty vagus nerve, your body's emergency brake. The command to be clear, to be calm, is often just another handful of mud. The effort to fix yourself is the very thing that keeps you perpetually muddled and biologically aroused. We have been sold a grand, terrible myth, particularly corrosive in the modern era, the story that life is a journey to a place called absolute security. Our society rewards constant striving and stress, equating high anxiety with high value. The desire is to build a fortress of money, status, and rigid beliefs, a guaranteed future where everything is permanent and perfectly predictable. This craving for total security is the deepest root of our modern anxiety. We are building magnificent sandcastles on the shore and demanding, through sheer mental force, that the tide never, ever come in. But the universe is not a fixed, stable photograph from the industrial age. It is a constant, flowing river. Watts called it the wiggly world. Look at reality. Clouds are not cubes. Mountains are not pyramids. Your own body is a constantly replacing stream of atoms. We are processes, like flames or whirlpools, temporary patterns that maintain their form while perpetually flowing. The more you try to construct a permanent, unmoving structure in the middle of this rapid current, the more frantic your resistance becomes. You build your sandcastle, let's call it my successful identity, and then the river laps at the edges, a company restructuring, a shift in social norms, a new technology. You panic. You try to hold back the water, but the water is the reality. You are, quite literally, at war with the fundamental nature of things. The desire for security and the fear of insecurity are two sides of the same coin. To desperately want security is the acute confession that you are, right now, completely insecure. It is an insecure act. This tension, this chronic contraction, is our way of life. We hold our breath physically and psychologically. The effort to defend the fort requires chronic low-level stress, keeping your system flooded with cortisol. We live in a state of self-induced hypoxia and tension. This is why anxiety is so often expressed somatically: the tightness in the chest, the clenched muscles, the shallow breathing, the inability to rest and digest. You have built a psychological fortress to feel safe. But now you have a far greater problem. You have to worry about the fort itself. Is the wall strong enough? Are there cracks in my positivity? Am I projecting the right image of success? The more you build, the more you have to lose, and the higher the biological tax you pay for defending an illusion. The whole of civilized life is, in many ways, this marvelous, elaborate breath-holding contest. Everyone is running around, faces turning slightly blue, thinking, if I can just hold on a little longer, I'll be safe. But you are suffocating, psychologically and physiologically. The cure is not to hold harder. It is to let the breath out. What would happen if you simply admitted, openly and honestly, that insecurity is not a problem to be solved, but the inherent, changing nature of existence? The problem is not the wiggly, flowing world. The problem is our ridiculous, stubborn expectation that it should be a fixed, predictable photograph. When we fall in love with the idea of a certain, predictable future, we set ourselves up for profound and continuous disappointment. The future is a ghost. It does not exist. There is only ever now. We are demanding a still photo when we are living in an improvisational jazzed piece. What a great crashing relief it is to realize you don't have to carry this immense burden. You don't have to ensure the outcome. The universe is already unfolding. You are not the director of this movie. You are an actor, a musician. And when you stop trying to write the script for the next act, you can finally relax and enjoy the show happening right now. This brings us to the profound shift. The cure for anxiety is not to eliminate insecurity, which is impossible. The cure is to fall in love with the insecurity, to see it not as a threat, but as the very thing that makes life vivid, dynamic, and precious. When you accept the wave, it loses its power. The cure, then, is not what you think. It is not trying harder, it is surrender. And this is where most people make the fatal mistake. They hear surrender and they equate it with defeat, with weakness, or with becoming a passive doormat. But surrender is the ultimate act of biological and existential intelligence. Surrender in this context is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is the ultimate act of intelligent cooperation with the flow of existence. Think of the swimmer again. The beginner, gripped by terror, fights the water, treating it as an adversary to be conquered. They struggle, they thrash, and they sink. Why? Because their frantic, ego-driven effort is fundamentally disconnected from the water's nature. Now look at the expert. The expert does not fight the water, they trust it. They allow the water to hold them up. They understand buoyancy. They are in a dynamic, active state of relaxation. This is intelligent relaxation. It is action without antagonism. In the human body, this translates directly to the nervous system. When we thrash, when we grasp for absolute security, we are engaging the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. This is the physiological signature of the troubleshooter mind running wild. But when we choose surrender, that conscious act of dropping the breath, relaxing the shoulders, allowing the feeling of anxiety to simply be, we activate the opposing force, the parasympathetic system, often called the rest and digest mode. This is specifically governed by the vagus nerve. Surrender is not merely a philosophical concept. It is a profound biological adjustment. By stopping the internal war, we improve our vagal tone, the fundamental ability of the body to regulate stress and return to calm. Our primitive troubleshooter brain, designed for the immediate threats of the Pleistocene, the rustle of a lion in the tall grass, is now trapped in a high rise. We are living in a psychological mismatch environment. The threat is no longer a lion. It's an abstract concept, a potential stock market dip, an ambiguous email from the boss, or the fear of being excluded from the modern tribe of social approval. The mind, brilliantly adapted for physical survival, is utterly ill-equipped for this torrent of abstract, non-physical worry. The anxiety, therefore, is not a failure of character. It is a system error caused by this mismatch. And what does the modern world offer to address this system error? It doesn't offer rest. It offers more problems. We have constructed vast, elaborate technological mechanisms designed not to calm the troubleshooter, but to keep it perpetually active and monetized. We enter the age of the digital Skinner box. Every notification, every endless scroll, every sensational news headline is a calculated hit of low-grade urgency and novelty designed to generate engagement. These platforms are brilliant psychological engineers that have weaponized the troubleshooter mind. They reward our anxiety. If you are anxious about your status, you scroll. If you are worried about the world, you click the urgent news alerts. The digital economy thrives not on peace, but on perpetual low-level fear, because fear demands attention, and attention is the ultimate currency. This digital acceleration combines lethally with another modern phenomenon, the paradox of choice. The troubleshooter mind seeks security through control, through finding the optimal path. But in a world flooded with infinite possibilities, infinite job titles, infinite life partners, infinite investments, infinite self-help gurus. The search for the best choice leads not to freedom, but to paralysis. Our ancestors worried about finding a good berry. We worry about finding the perfect berry and the paralyzing fear that the one we chose is preventing us from enjoying a potentially better one. This is the existential burden of modern freedom. The demand for absolute certainty requires us to scan and process infinite variables, an impossible computational task that locks the troubleshooter mind in a permanent state of high alert, asking, did I optimize my life? Could I be doing better? The effort to control everything results in the control of nothing. This is exacerbated by a toxic modern productivity culture that tells us that every aspect of our existence is a problem to be solved or a metric to be maximized. Even our emotional life becomes a project. We are constantly being told to fix our anxiety, force positivity, or achieve happiness. This feeds the meta-anxiety, the worrying about your worry. The act of trying to force yourself into a state of calm is simply another manifestation of grasping, of control, of the very anxiety you wish to escape. It's the Chinese finger trap analogy writ large. The harder you pull away from the anxiety, the tighter its grip becomes. You are defining yourself as insufficient, as a problem that requires fixing. And if you are constantly in need of fixing, you are perpetually living for a future state of mind that will never arrive. When the future arrives, it is merely the present, and the troubleshooter has already found the next thing to worry about. The moment of profound release, the cosmic giggle that Watts spoke of, happens when you realize that the entire effort is a self-perpetuating illusion. The ego, that fragile sense of self inside the bag of skin, is the doctor who is also the disease. It identifies the problem anxiety and then attempts to cure it, thereby reinforcing its own existence as the perpetual problem solver. The only way to win this game is to see the game for what it is, and then simply stop playing. So, if the cure is to stop playing, how do we operationalize that? How do we stop the mind when it feels like a runaway train? The shift begins with attention, with the single most fundamental realization: you are not your thoughts. You are not the frantic voice in your head, nor are you the anxiety it generates. That voice is a tool, the troubleshooter, but it is not the master. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. You are the vast, boundless, silent space of awareness in which the thoughts and feelings, the clouds, the storms, the anxieties arise and pass. The sky does not resist the cloud. It doesn't become the cloud. It simply, silently, witnesses it. And in that simple, non-reactive witnessing, the cloud loses its terrifying power. This is the subtle but utterly profound shift in identity. When you feel the familiar tightening in your chest or the racing thoughts, instead of saying, "I am anxious," try shifting your perspective just slightly. "I am aware of a feeling of anxiety." Do you feel the difference? In the first statement, you are fused with the anxiety. It has consumed your entire identity. In the second statement, a tiny crucial distance is established. There is you, the aware space, and there is the feeling, which is merely a temporary guest passing through that space. You realize anxiety is not a fixed, permanent trait of your being. It is just weather. And weather changes. The most powerful anxiety-producing machine ever invented is the future. It is the factory where all your worries are manufactured. What if this happens? What if that doesn't? The troubleshooter loves the future because it is infinitely malleable, full of hypothetical problems that demand immediate calculation. But the future is a ghost. It is never, ever here. The only thing that is ever here is now. This moment. Right now. When you find yourself caught in that frantic, forward-rushing torrent of worry, you must learn to drop the story. Stop focusing on the narrative about the future, and return your attention completely to the direct, raw sensory experience of the present moment. What do you feel? The weight of your body in the chair, the pressure of your clothes on your skin, the quiet, undeniable rhythm of the breath moving in and out of your body. The anxiety is not found in the direct experience of the present moment. The anxiety is only found in the story you are telling yourself about the future in the present moment. The moment you drop the story and anchor yourself to the undeniable facts of the here and now, the anxiety loses its fuel. It has to quiet down because you are no longer paying attention to its frantic, hypothetical chatter. This is the essence of allowing rather than forcing. It is the difference between trying to fall asleep the surest way to stay awake and simply creating the conditions for rest, and then allowing sleep to happen. And finally, the ultimate secret to winning this internal war is simply this: stop taking yourself so seriously. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is playing a magnificent, dynamic game of hide and seek with itself. It creates galaxies, sunsets, children's laughter, and it creates you. With all your anxieties and triumphs for the sheer joy of it, we are like an actor on the stage who has forgotten he is acting and truly believes he is Hamlet, truly in mortal peril. We are so invested in our little script, our little ego sandcastle, that we forget it is all just a divine play. The hilarious contradiction of being a temporary, wiggly expression of the eternal universe, worrying desperately about its temporariness. I wish for you moments of profound cosmic laughter, a laughter that comes not at anything, but from the very belly of the universe. It is the moment you realize the absolute absurdity of your own seriousness. And in that laughter, the anxiety which feeds on solemnity and gravity has no place to hide. It is laughed away. The ultimate cure for anxiety is not a technique to be mastered, not a 10-step plan, or a pill. It is a fundamental shift in perception, a metanoia, a turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. It is the realization that the separate, anxious ego, the me that feels so fragile and lonely, is a convincing character in a dream. It is a temporary formation. Our deepest nature is not separate from the universe. We are not a ship being tossed about on a hostile ocean. We are the ocean itself. We are both the wave, the individual, temporary, anxious expression, and the water, the eternal, boundless, silent depth. The cure for anxiety, it turns out, is to simply stop trying to cure it, to stop running from yourself, and to allow yourself to be fully, completely, and unapologetically alive. The first and most fundamental step, the answer to the exasperated question of how do I surrender, is this: recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are not the frantic, recursive voice of the troubleshooter mind. That voice is a tool, an evolutionary survival mechanism that has simply run riot in the modern environment. But it is not the master of the house. It is not you. You are the awareness that is aware of the anxiety. This is the subtle but utterly profound shift. When the cortisol spikes and the mind begins its frantic chatter, instead of saying, "I am anxious," which consumes you completely, try saying, "I am aware of a feeling of anxiety." Do you feel the tiny, crucial distance created by those words? There is you, the vast, aware space, and there is the feeling, which is merely a temporary guest in that space. You are the sky. The anxiety is just weather, a cloud passing through. The sky doesn't become the cloud. It simply, silently witnesses it, allowing the cloud to be. And in that allowing, without resistance or attachment, the cloud has less and less power. It dissipates. It changes. It passes. The second step is to stop living in the future. The future is the anxiety manufacturing machine, the factory where all your worries are built on the what-if assembly line. It's what keeps the troubleshooter running. But the future is a ghost. It is never here. The only thing that is ever here is now. So when you find yourself caught in that frantic mental rush, just stop. Bring your attention, completely and forcefully, into the present moment. Not the story about the moment, but the raw, direct sensory experience of it. Listen to the hum of the computer. Feel the precise weight of your body in the chair, the sensation of your clothes on your skin, the air moving in and out of your lungs. The anxiety is not in the undeniable, simple facts of the here and now. The anxiety is in the elaborate story you are telling yourself about the future while sitting in the present moment. The moment you drop the story and commit to the raw data of your senses, you cut the anxiety's fuel line. It must quiet down because you are no longer paying attention to its panic chatter. You are listening to the bird instead. And finally, the third step: stop taking yourself so seriously. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is not engaged in some laborious calculation. It is playing a magnificent, cosmic game of hide and seek with itself. It creates galaxies and black holes, sunsets and waterfalls for the sheer, abundant joy of it. And it creates you this specific, temporary, highly organized expression of the universal flow with all your anxieties and triumphs. We are like an actor on stage who has forgotten he is acting, believing he is truly Hamlet, truly in danger, burdened by monumental seriousness. But the moment you achieve that profound cosmic laughter, the realization of the absolute absurdity of your own solemn, frantic effort to control the uncontrollable, that seriousness dissolves. Anxiety, which feeds on gravity and tension, finds nowhere to hide. It is simply laughed away. The ultimate cure is not a technique to be mastered. It is a metanoia, a profound, non-verbal reorientation. It is the realization that the separate, anxious ego, the me that feels lonely and fragile, is a temporary, convincing character in a dream, programmed by the environment. Our deepest nature is not separate. We are the universe itself, conscious and awake. My philosophy does not offer a quick fix. It offers a reorientation that asks us to question our most deeply cherished assumptions, the illusion that we need to be perpetually protected, improved, and made secure. When we stop believing in that illusion, the anxiety that is built into it begins to dissolve. It has no foundation to stand on. We can finally rest. We can rest in the knowledge that we are not a fragile ship being tossed about on a hostile, indifferent ocean. We are the ocean itself. We are both the wave, the individual, temporary, anxious expression, and the water, the eternal, boundless, silent depth. We are the dance of energy that has been going on for 14 billion years, and we are the awareness watching the dance. The cure for anxiety, it turns out, is to simply stop trying to cure it, to stop running from yourself, and to allow yourself to be fully, completely, and unapologetically alive, to be what you already are.